Welcome back, current and aspiring project managers, to this explainer. Today, I'm stepping in as your personal exam prep coach to guide you through an absolutely critical framework for your Prince 2.7 certification. Now, did you know that a massive number of people actually fail their exams simply because they misunderstand this one core topic? It's true. So we're going to break down the exact rules of the road that dictate whether a project is set up for success or literally destined to fail. Mastering this material isn't just about passing a test, though. It's a real game changer for how you deliver value in your organization. So here is a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll start broadly with the 7 Prince 2 principles, do a deep dive into business justification, explore the business case, apply it to a real-world scenario, and then finish up with specific strategies to help you ace your exam. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the 7 Prince 2 principles. To really understand how projects succeed, we first have to step back and look at the big picture. You see, these principles don't just exist in a vacuum. They are actually one of 5 integrated elements of the Prince 2 methodology. They sit right alongside the people involved, the daily practices you utilize, the chronological processes you follow, and of course, the specific project context you're operating within. For a project to hum along smoothly, all of these elements have to work together harmoniously. Now, there are 7 core principles that form your framework. But here's the catch, and this is super important. These aren't just polite suggestions. The source material is exceptionally clear on this. They are strict obligations. If you aren't applying all 7, you just aren't genuinely managing a Prince 2 project. You've got to learn from experience, define clear roles, manage by stages and exception, focus on products, and tailor your approach. Today, though, we're putting a magnifying glass on that very first requirement. Moving on to section 2, let's focus on principle 1, business justification. This right here is the absolute cornerstone of why we do project management in the first place. There must be a justifiable reason for starting a project. Simple enough, right? But wait, it doesn't end at the kickoff meeting. That justification has to remain valid, and you have to continuously revalidate it throughout the entire life cycle of the project. It's the engine that drives your decision-making to guarantee you're actually contributing to the business's objectives. And that brings us to a hard truth, one that test makers absolutely love. Projects are not immortal. Without strict rigor, organizations have this bad habit of letting zombie projects just shamble along, eating up budgets way after the actual benefits are long dead. Well, in Prince 2, you have to play the zombie hunter. If a project loses its justification at any point, you pull the plug. It has to be reconsidered or terminated immediately so you don't waste another dime. Let's move to section 3, the business case, and how we track all of this. So to prevent our projects from turning into those budget-eating zombies, we use a very specific practice to track our justification, and that is the business case. Now listen, I want you to drill this exact phrasing into your memory for the exam. A business case actively assesses whether an idea and the resulting project is and crucially remains desirable, viable, and achievable. If anything happens that negatively impacts its desirability, viability, or achievability, boom, you have to instantly review your justification. So how exactly do the principle and the practice link up in reality? Well, by creating and actively maintaining your business case, you achieve that fundamental requirement of continuous business justification. And the ultimate result? It gives your project board absolute confidence that the investment is genuinely worthwhile. That confidence is the gold standard you're always striving to provide. All right, section 4, let's look at a real-world application. Let's step out of the textbook for a second. Imagine a commercial setting where you're balancing very different needs between stakeholders. Justification isn't always about cold, hard cash. For a customer, sure, value might mean spending money to expand their market share. But for the supplier, their justification for participating might be gaining invaluable technical experience with a brand new technology, or maybe securing a massive, high-profile promotional reference. Both are perfectly valid justifications, but both must be continuously maintained. And finally, section 5, acing the exam. Okay, we've covered the theory and we've covered the real-world reality. Now, let's make sure you secure that certification. If you see a question on test day asking what the business justification principle actually facilitates, you have to know how to filter out the brilliant distractions that exam writers hears. Trust me, they love throwing in answers that sound incredibly correct just because they happen to reference other valid Prince 2 principles. For instance, examiners will often try to trick you by confusing justification with manage by exception. You have to separate them. Justification is all about overarching value, viability, and alignment with business benefits. Manage by exception, on the other hand, is strictly about setting limits of delegated authority. Don't mix up the big picture value of the entire project with the mathematical tolerances of a specific stage, like a plus or minus 2% variance on sales. They are not the same thing. Here's another massive trap: confusing justification with tailoring. The exam might offer an answer about adapting the method to the scale of the investment. Sounds pretty nice, right? But actually, that represents the tailor to suit the project principle. Tailoring focuses on adapting your project controls to perfectly fit the scale, risk, and complexity of your specific environment. Justification is purely about whether that valid reason for doing the project still exists at all. Now please, whatever you do, do not fall for the compulsory project trap. This one comes up constantly. A scenario might tell you that a new law or regulation literally forces a company to undertake a project, and they'll heavily imply that justification isn't needed since, the work is mandatory anyway. False. Absolutely false. Even if a project is compulsory, you still have to justify the specific option or approach you choose to take, just to guarantee you are getting the absolute best overall value for the money spent. Well, we have covered a ton of ground today, from the integration of those core principles down to dodging tricky exam traps about tolerances and mandatory projects. As you head into your exams and, much more importantly, your future careers managing real investments, I want you to keep this first principle front of mind. Ask yourself honestly, if your current project lost its business justification today, would you have the courage to step up and stop it? And even more crucially, do you know the exact steps Prince 2 requires you to take when you finally have to pull that plug? We're going to cover exactly that in our next deep dive. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and best of luck on your certification.